Thank you. And I will ask Mrs. Cindy Alba, our Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, to introduce this public hearing item, which involves a notice of general waivers.
Okay, once again, good evening and thank you. This is a public hearing, or we're going to ask that you'll open a public hearing requesting, because what we want to do is we want to request from the State Board of Education for general waivers for part of the Ed Code, for Ed Code 48352, the Open Enrollment Act for Marilyn Avenue and Junction K-8 schools for the 2013-14 school year. So there is an Ed Code 33050 that does allow districts for boards of education to request from the State Board of Education waivers for either district-wide or for specific schools for all or part of Ed Codes. The Ed Code that we're seeking the waiver for, as I said, is 48352, the Open Enrollment Act. And just a little bit of history on that. That Open Enrollment Act was signed in 2010, January of 2010, and it came about, if you'll remember, with the Race to the Top funding that all the districts were, different states actually, were competing for that federal funding, and there were several different requirements that states need to put into place, and that's when, as our state was moving forward for this funding, they passed this law and this Ed Code that would allow, it was intended to allow more choice for families to be able to, if the school was not achieving, the students were not achieving well, that the students would be allowed to go to other schools, not just within the district, but in other districts. So this Ed Code is referred to as the Open Enrollment Act. And what they did in this act was to identify what they called 1,000 low achieving schools. And the implication is that in the state, those are the lowest achieving schools. But the way the formula works on this is that they looked at, in 2009, the sort of the breakdown of schools that were in decile level 1 for API, and that decided how many elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools would be identified as part of these 1,000 lowest schools. Within that piece of deciding what schools fit into this category, it was also determined, and is in Ed Code, that no more than 10% of the schools in a district can be identified as low performing. So in other words, if you look throughout the whole state and look at the APIs, this is what they're using, our APIs. If you look at the APIs throughout the state, any district, and we know there are some urban districts that have many low performing schools, they can only have 10% of their schools as part of this. The other exclusion to this was any charter schools. Now, there are some high-performing charter schools, but there are many low-performing charter schools. So, again, with looking at 1,000 low-performing schools, it needed to fit this ratio of how many elementary, middle, and high schools would fit that. And also, it eliminated many schools just because of those ratios. So, therefore, there are higher-performing schools on this list. So right now we have Junction and Marilyn Avenue School that appear on this list, so we're asking for a waiver for 1 year for those schools. And our reasons for asking for the waivers for those schools is really because neither Marilyn Avenue or Junction Avenue should really be on this open enrollment list if you think about low-performing schools. These are both schools that have demonstrated ongoing academic improvement through the years. We know that Marilyn Avenue is over 800 over the state limit for the API. We know that Marilyn Avenue has made incredible growth over the years. Junction Avenue, they've made growth on their CST scores. Marilyn Avenue, their similar school score is a 8. Junction is a 9. So there's sort of like two different primary reasons we believe that these schools, and why we want to seek the waiver, is that we don't believe that this definition of low achieving really fits these two schools when you think of 1,000 low performing schools. There are many schools within the state that would be lower than those. And the other category is that this open enrollment does not really add any new transfer options for our students. We have an open enrollment district. Our students can go to any school they want within our districts, and we approve transfers that students are seeking to even go outside the district. So it's not really adding anything to for our students. What it does for our families, because as a part of seeking this waiver, we did go to our school site councils at both Junction and Marilyn, and to our district advisory committee and our ELAC to get their support, as well as our Teacher Association, CSCA, and SEIU. But in going out to the schools and speaking with their school site council, it's confusing to people because of these different accountability systems. And so it distracts from the work that's happening at the school. So we really don't believe that the schools should be on the list, and we want to seek a waiver from the state so that we don't confuse our families around what's really happening at these schools. I just have to grab my folder. Give you some numbers. Right now, through our open enrollment policies that we have right now for the 12-13 school year, just to give you an example, Maryland School has 46 transfers into the school and 51 transfers out. So there are definitely people taking advantage of our transfer policy district-wide. At Junction, at the elementary level, we have 58 transfers in and 30 going out. And at Junction Middle School, we have 11 coming in, and we have more going out, 83 going out. So this waiver that we would be requesting would be for 1 year from July 1st through 2013 through June 30th, 2014. So we would ask that that the board open the public hearing, take comments, and then close the public hearing.
Okay, with that, we'll open the public hearing. And do we have any people who would like to address the board on this issue? And seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And now we can discuss the issue of general waivers. Mm-hmm. Do you have a separate briefing for this? Or?
No, I have one slide that says this and one slide that says
Please,
what our recommendation is.
Okay, so board members, comments. Mrs. Runyon.
Well, I think the most egregious thing in the education code is that no district can have more than 10% of its schools in the list. If you're going to make a list of low-performing schools, let's make it be low-performing schools. Let's not say low-performing unless you happen to be Oakland or San Diego or San Francisco, and then, you know, our school with 800 is being put on a list with many schools not on the list with significantly lower scores. It defies logic. So I'm wholly in support of asking for this waiver.
Other board members? Now, last year we had the same issue, and we were very proactive, saying we didn't like what was done here. So I'm fully in support of us, you know, asking for a general waiver and sending a very strong letter saying we're very supportive of that. So with that, do we have a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the superintendent's recommendation for the submission of general waivers on behalf of Maryland and Junction schools.
A second? There we go. We have a second. Okay. So in this case, board members, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. So it's unanimous that we will recommend that we submit this waiver for the schools. Accompany it with a strong letter, will you please,
We will draft a strongly worded letter, and actually the Assemblywoman Joan Buchanan also provided some language because she feels that, as Mrs. Runyon does, that it's really an unfair judgment of schools, and it places schools in a category that is not deserved, and it really is misleading. So she also gave us some verbiage that we can include.